173 degrees, that is the actual temperature gap that showed up across this country just yesterday. From 103 degrees Fahrenheit down in Laredo, Texas, all the way to negative 70 degrees Fahrenheit up in Alaska. And that kind of extreme imbalance is exactly like pulling back on a giant rubber band. And right now, folks, we are about to let it go. On top of that, the Storm Prediction Center has already put out a 15% probability of significant severe weather. And if you know anything about how carefully those folks pick their words, you know that number is not thrown around casually covering a zone from Waco and Dallas all the way through Oklahoma City up to Kansas City. And that window opens Friday. And the number that should have everyone in the Mississippi Valley sitting up straight right now, 4 to 8 inches of rain in just 7 days. Centered on Fort Smith, Arkansas, with some pockets likely coming in even higher than that, because this pattern is not sending one storm through it, is stacking them like freight trains on the same track, back to back to back. Which side of that snapping rubber band you end up on this week depends entirely on where you live, so let's go city by city, right now. Starting with what is already hitting people this morning before most of us have even had our second cup of coffee. Here's the thing about today. Tuesday, March 3rd, the sneakiest and most genuinely dangerous situation is not the big storm that is coming later in the week. It is the ice that is glazing over roads right now across the mid-Atlantic and parts of the Ohio Valley. And too many people are heading out into it underprepared. What is happening is called cold air. Damming high pressure to the north is funneling freezing air down the eastern side of the Appalachians. And that sets up a perfect trap for freezing rain to fall on roads that look wet but are actually glazed over solid. And the worst of this is landing smack in the middle of the Tuesday morning commute window across West Virginia. Virginia, Western Maryland, and Southern Pennsylvania. Now, 1/10 of an inch of ice, that is what the models have been showing for this zone, and yeah, I know, 1/10 of an inch does not sound like much, but 1/10 of an inch of freezing rain on a bridge or overpass is enough to put your car sideways before you even realize what happened, and the I-81 corridor and I-70 through Maryland are exactly the spots that freeze first. The areas on highest alert right now: I-64 between Beckley, West Virginia and Lexington, Virginia Harrisonburg, Frederick, and the outer suburbs of Washington, D.C., Hillsville, Salem, and Lynchburg in Virginia. If you are in any of those spots and you do not absolutely have to be driving this morning, do yourself a favor and stay put, full stop. Washington, D.C. is at 48 degrees Fahrenheit with a light rain and snow mix. Baltimore at 46 degrees Fahrenheit with snow and sleet. Philadelphia at 46 degrees Fahrenheit with a light snow and sleet mix. Pittsburgh at 42 degrees Fahrenheit with snow possible and winds 15 to 25 miles per hour. And here is the kicker: roads in this whole corridor look wet, but are hiding ice on every bridge and overpass in the region. So do not let that 46 degrees Fahrenheit reading fool you into thinking it is fine out there. The ice concern stretches further west than most people realize. 50 to 70% chance of at least a glaze across southern Illinois, southern Indiana, and right into the Cincinnati and Lexington, Kentucky area, Columbus at 40 degrees Fahrenheit with 1 to 2 inches of snow and gusty winds. Indianapolis at 38 degrees Fahrenheit with snow showers. Fort Wayne at 40 degrees Fahrenheit with snow possible all of central Ohio. And Indiana is dealing with this same messy, sneaky setup today. Kansas City is at 54 degrees Fahrenheit with a possible rain and snow mix and winds 15 to 25 miles per hour. St. Louis at 54 degrees Fahrenheit with a rain and snow mix, making for a real mess of a commute. And Wichita is sitting at 60 degrees Fahrenheit, which sounds fine, but those winds are running 20 to 30 miles per hour. The kind of gusty conditions that dry out a road just enough to lull you right before the temperature drops and glazes it right back over again. Heads up. Kansas City and St. Louis. Real quick, drop your city and tell us what it looks like out your window right now. Are you dealing with ice? Snow? Just a gross, wet mess? Or are you sitting pretty somewhere dry? We read every single one of these. And if enough folks from a specific area check in, That area gets its own dedicated segment in tomorrow's update. Your comment genuinely shapes what we cover next. Now, up in the Great Lakes and upper Midwest, today is cold but manageable compared to what is sitting further south. Chicago is at 36 degrees Fahrenheit with 1 to 3 inches of snow and winds 15 to 25 miles per hour. Milwaukee and Madison both at 36 degrees Fahrenheit with snow showers. Detroit at 38 degrees Fahrenheit with snow showers. Toledo at 40 degrees Fahrenheit with a snow mix. Cleveland at 40 degrees Fahrenheit with lake effect showers. That whole region is doing that classic March thing where winter just refuses to pack its bags and leave. Minneapolis and St. Paul are both at 34 degrees Fahrenheit today with 1 to 2 inches of snow and winds 15 to 25 miles per hour. Wind chills are still sitting well below 20 degrees Fahrenheit up there. Buffalo at 38 degrees Fahrenheit. With lake effect snow bands that can ramp up real fast. And that whole northern tier is the cold air engine that is powering this entire week's pattern. So keep your eye on the Twin Cities because what happens there in the next 48 hours feeds directly into the Friday storm setup. Head south and the story flips completely. Charlotte, Raleigh, Greensboro, and Durham in the Carolinas are 62 degrees Fahrenheit to 64 degrees Fahrenheit with rain and zero winter concerns. Atlanta at 66 degrees Fahrenheit with showers. Nashville at 60 degrees Fahrenheit with rainstorms. Lexington at 56 degrees Fahrenheit. Louisville at 54 degrees Fahrenheit. The Mid-South is warm and wet and quiet for today, but that quiet part is absolutely about to change. And Wednesday is when it starts. Down in Texas and the Gulf, the severe weather fuel is already cooking Houston at 75 degrees Fahrenheit with heavy rain and thunderstorms and a high tornado risk on the table today. Dallas at 72 degrees Fahrenheit with thunderstorms possible. Fort Worth at 74 degrees Fahrenheit. Austin at 76 degrees Fahrenheit with active storms. San Antonio at 78 degrees Fahrenheit with scattered showers. And that warm, juiced up Gulf air that is sitting right across this whole Texas corridor is exactly the ingredient that makes the Wednesday and Friday setup so concerning. New Orleans is at 76 degrees Fahrenheit with heavy rain. Memphis at 64 degrees Fahrenheit with severe risk already building. Corpus Christi at 80 degrees Fahrenheit with showers and breezy winds. Laredo at a record-challenging 84 degrees Fahrenheit. And all of that extreme Gulf warmth and moisture is being pumped steadily northward this week, which is why the flooding corridor from Dallas through Ohio is as serious as it is. This is not one storm's worth of rain. This is a week's worth of the same moisture pipeline aimed at the same strip of country. Oklahoma City is sunny and 66 degrees Fahrenheit today, and that is honestly the most important thing to understand about this kind of setup. The atmosphere can look completely calm the day before it goes absolutely haywire. OKC and the Southern Plains are quietly building up surface moisture and wind shear right now that you cannot see on a thermometer. And by Wednesday, that invisible buildup starts to show itself in a very visible way. Out west, if you are watching from Phoenix, Mesa, Scottsdale, Chandler, or Tucson, you are genuinely in a completely different weather world today. 78 degrees Fahrenheit to 80 degrees Fahrenheit. Sunny, bone dry, near record warmth for early March, and while half the country is watching for ice and supercells. The Arizona Metro is living its best life, enjoy it. But maybe check on a friend or family member who lives in the storm zones, because this week is no joke for a lot of people. Now let's talk about Wednesday, March 4th, because this is where severe weather season officially clocks in for 2026, and the Storm Prediction Center has already locked in a slight risk covering southeastern Oklahoma, north central Texas including Dallas, and western Arkan Fort Smith, Fayetteville, Texarkana damaging winds, large hail, and a couple of tornadoes are all on the table. And this is not a marginal signal anymore. The setup for Wednesday is pretty much a textbook recipe warm. Moisture-loaded Gulf air getting pumped hard to the north while a piece of energy digs in from the west. And when those two things collide with the wind shear, the models are showing. You do not get garden variety thunderstorms, you get organized. rotating supercell-capable storms, and that is a very different animal. Dallas and Fort Worth. You are in the epicenter of Wednesday's event. Keep your county-level weather alerts on all day Wednesday. Know which room in your house you are heading to if a tornado warning hits your specific county. Because tornado warnings move faster than most people expect, and your county is what matters, not just your city. Here is the part that catches folks off guard in a multi-day setup like this one. Wednesday is actually not the main event. Both the GFS and the European model are pointing clearly at Friday, March 6th, as the bigger day of the two. And in some of the metrics the meteorologists look at, the Friday setup looks more impressive than Wednesday. That 15% significant severe probability from the SPC is specifically flagging Friday, and to put that in plain terms, that is not a number they post for ordinary stormy days that goes out when the atmospheric ingredients are lining up in a way that history tells us produces widespread significant tornadoes, baseball-sized hail, and damaging straight-line winds across a large area. The Friday zone is bigger than Wednesday's, and it shifts north, covering all of Oklahoma, including OKC Norman, and Tulsa, North Texas, and the whole DFW area up through southeastern Kansas and Wichita into Missouri, Kansas City, Springfield, Jefferson City, and Joplin, and into northwestern Arkansas. We are talking about tens of millions of people across the central U.S. who need to have a plan in place before Thursday night. And Friday is a dual threat day because on the cold backside of that same low pressure system that is producing severe weather across the southern plains, you get a snowstorm. So if you live in the Nebraska Panhandle, South Dakota, or up into Minnesota, the cold side of Friday's low could deliver a legitimate accumulating snow event. Both the GFS and European are agreeing on that, which gives that signal real credibility. Now, and this is the part people consistently underestimate in a week like this. Let's talk about flooding. Because when this is all said and done, flooding may actually turn out to be the bigger story than even the severe weather for a lot of communities caught in the middle of that rainfall corridor. The GFS is showing serious, persistent, repeated rain from Dallas all the way up to Chicago, not one round, but multiple storm systems riding the same moisture pipeline, one right after another, and over 7 days. The models are piling up 4 to 8 inches of rain centered around Fort Smith, Arkansas, with some pockets coming in even higher as that train just keeps running. Here's the part that turns a heavy rain event into a flooding disaster after the first storm saturates the ground. Every single inch of rain from the next storm has nowhere to go but sideways into creeks, streams, and rivers, and by midweek when the second and third rounds hit, the soil across this entire Dallas to Chicago corridor is going to be full up and done accepting water. Fort Smith, Arkansas. You are right in the bullseye. You are also in Wednesday's severe weather zone, and you are looking at multiple heavy rain events over 7 days with no meaningful dry period in between if any creek or stream near you is already running on the high side from recent rain. Please take that seriously today, before the next round shows up, not after. Memphis, Tennessee, 64 degrees Fahrenheit today with thunderstorms already possible, and squarely in that 4 to 8 inch corridor, the Mississippi River system has a long memory when it comes to repeated heavy rain. And the river gauge levels in your area are worth checking right now. Keep those flood alerts turned on through the weekend. For Cincinnati, Columbus, Indianapolis, and Pittsburgh, you are on the northern edge of the flooding corridor. Still looking at 2 to 4 inches over the stretch. And here is the thing that catches people by surprise every single time. It does not matter if it has been dry where you are. 3 inches of rain in a short window is enough to send a normally quiet little creek over its banks, and it almost always happens overnight when people are asleep. Here is the community check-in we want from you this week if you live anywhere in that flooding corridor. What does your nearest creek or river look like today before any of this rain even gets started? Drop your city and your current conditions in the comments. Because we are building a live picture of where the most vulnerable areas are heading into the back half of the week. And your ground report helps shape tomorrow's coverage. All right, now let's zoom all the way out. Because once you get past this first wave of Wednesday, Friday activity, Both the GFS and the European model are building towards something that has genuinely got meteorologists paying close attention for the week of March 10th. And here is where those two models are pulling in opposite directions in a way that matters a lot for your long-range planning. Here is what both models actually agree on after Wednesday and Friday's storms clear out. A massive warm-up is coming, and by the weekend of March 7th and 8th. The European model is showing temperatures running 20 to 30 degrees above normal across the eastern half of the country, 83 degrees Fahrenheit in Nashville, 76 degrees Fahrenheit in Cincinnati, 70 degrees Fahrenheit in Kansas City, 61 degrees Fahrenheit in Chicago. That is genuine shirt-sleeve weather in March. And it is real, and it is coming. But, and here is where the European and the GFS part ways hard. Once that warm stretch peaks around March 8th. The two models are telling completely different stories about what happens next. And the gap between those two stories is enormous for tens of millions of people across the East. The European model says winter is not done. It is showing a major storm system developing around March 10th to 12th, with a wintry side that could bring accumulating snow back to the northern plains and upper Midwest, and a severe weather side that ramps back up over Texas, Arkansas, and Louisiana, potentially strong enough to be the biggest event of the month. The GFS says not so fast. It also shows a significant storm around that March 10th to 12th window. But it is keeping the winter weather component further west and less impactful for the Midwest and Northeast. And while there is still a severe weather side on the southern flank, the GFS version of that event is meaningfully less dramatic than what the European is showing. So, here is the real question, and nobody can give you a definitive answer right now which model is right about March 10th, because if the European is correct, we are looking at one of the most active first halves of March in recent years, back to back to back, with a potentially significant storm arriving just before St. Patrick's Day. But if the GFS is right, the back half of the pattern is considerably calmer, and that is a massive difference. The answer to that question, European or GFS, is going to start becoming clearer in the model runs over the next 48 to 72 hours, and that means if you check back here tomorrow morning, we are going to have a significantly sharper picture of whether the March 10th to 12th event is shaping up to be a major story or a more modest system that is not a throwaway line. That is a genuine reason to tune in tomorrow. Now let's take a step back and look at where everyone stands today, temperature-wise. Because the contrast across this country right now is honestly one of the more striking things you will see in any year Minneapolis at 34 degrees Fahrenheit with snow and wind. Miami at 84 degrees Fahrenheit, that 50-degree gap between two cities in the same country on the same Tuesday morning, is the textbook definition of the weather pattern we are locked into right now. Denver and Aurora are at 50 degrees Fahrenheit today with possible light snow. Colorado Springs at 48 degrees Fahrenheit with light snow. And those two cities are sitting right on the dividing line between the cold air pool in the west and the warmth spreading in from the southwest. Which is why Denver is going to feel that midweek pattern flip more dramatically than almost anywhere else in the country. 50 degrees Fahrenheit and light snow today. Potentially 60s and sunshine by Thursday. Omaha at 50 degrees Fahrenheit with possible snow and winds 15 to 25 miles per hour. Lincoln at 52 degrees Fahrenheit with snow possible. And both of those cities are sitting in the zone where the Friday low pressure track becomes critical if that low tracks a little further south. Omaha ends up on the warm, rainy side if it tracks further north. They are looking at a snowstorm, and right now the models genuinely have not made up their minds on that track yet. For the OKC-Tulsa corridor, and I want to address this area directly because this is the highest stakes zone in the country. This week, you are 66 degrees Fahrenheit and sunny in Oklahoma City right now. 64 degrees Fahrenheit and partly cloudy in Tulsa. And do not let that fool you for 1 second that calm is exactly what the atmosphere does before it unleashes. And by Wednesday, you are in the slight risk zone. And by Friday, you are inside that 15% significant severe probability. Know where your shelter is before Wednesday night. Los Angeles is at 70 degrees Fahrenheit and sunny San Francisco at 62 degrees Fahrenheit and mild Sacramento at 68 degrees Fahrenheit. And the Climate Prediction Center is showing drier than normal conditions continuing across California, which means wildfire risk stays elevated as March warmth builds across the southwest Phoenix and Tucson at 80 degrees Fahrenheit, and bone dry is the other end of that spectrum. And neither situation is what you want heading into fire season. Seattle is at 54 degrees Fahrenheit with heavy rain and breezy winds. Portland at 56 degrees Fahrenheit with heavy rain, and the Pacific Northwest is in full wet mode today, which is actually an important ingredient in the broader story because that moisture and energy coming off the Pacific is what feeds into the jet stream that carries these storm systems east across the Rockies and into the plains later in the week. Here is something worth sitting with for a moment. Phoenix at 80 degrees Fahrenheit. Miami at 84 degrees Fahrenheit. Los Angeles at 70 degrees Fahrenheit, and simultaneously Pittsburgh at 42 degrees Fahrenheit with snow. Indianapolis at 38 degrees Fahrenheit with snow showers. Minneapolis at 34 degrees Fahrenheit with wind chills below 20. And all of that is happening across the same country on the same Tuesday morning because of that 173-degree rubber band that got pulled back yesterday and is letting go right now. If you are in the warm and sunny zone today, and good for you. Honestly, please do us a favor and share this video with someone you know who lives in the storm zones. Because the single biggest difference between being caught off guard by a tornado warning and being prepared for it is about 24 hours of advance notice, and that is exactly what this forecast is giving people right now. Before we wrap up, we specifically want to hear from people in areas that do not usually get called out in national forecasts. If you are in the Ozarks, in southwest Missouri, in rural Arkansas, in the Nebraska or Kansas panhandles, or anywhere along the I-44 corridor through Oklahoma, drop your city in the comments and tell us what the weather looks like on the ground where you are sitting right now. Because here is what is riding on the model runs that are coming in tonight. The overnight data is going to either confirm or meaningfully shift where Wednesday's severe weather corridor sets up, and it is going to give us the first real clue about whether the European or the GFS is winning the argument about March 10th, and if either of those things moves significantly tonight. That is the lead story in tomorrow's video. Full stop. The overnight model run could shift the Wednesday tornado threat zone north toward St. Louis and Little Rock. Or it could keep it tight around Dallas and Fort Smith, and that answer changes what 20 million people in the middle of this country should be doing this week, which is exactly why you want to check back tomorrow morning before you make plans for Wednesday and Thursday. Here's the bottom line: don't be scared. Be prepared. This week is a big one, no question. But big weather weeks are survivable when you know what is coming. Keep your county level alerts on. Not just installed, but actually turned on with the volume up check on your neighbors in the storm zones. And we will see you tomorrow morning with the sharpest picture yet of what this week is really shaping up to be.